This is Gay News Radio with Brandon Carmody, featuring Roddy Biggs, Samuel, Laura, and Special Agent J.
You're listening to Gay News Radio. I'm Brandon Carmody, and we are here with the full panel today. So why don't we go around the room and do some introductions. Start with Roddy Biggs. Roddy Biggs, welcome to Gay News Radio. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am a model and actor. I've been signed with Hand Agency for about 5 years. I'm also an LGBTQ advocate and a member of the community. And besides this, I am the president of a high school or of a college GSA and do a lot of work in the community. So it's great to be doing one more thing.
Thank you. Welcome to Gay News Radio. We appreciate you. Special Agent J, of course, welcome to GNR. Tell us about your work.
Well, I work on contracts for the United States Geological Survey and the Pacific Northwest Seismological Network. In my spare time, I enjoy spending time hiking with my husband, who I've been with for 4 years, and my cat. Oh, and Star Trek, Star Wars, doesn't matter. They're both awesome.
All right. Well, very inclusive. Thank you, Special Agent J. Samuel Laura, the author of 5 books, including Toy Soldier. Welcome to Gay News Radio.
Hello, Brandon. Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me.
Tell us about your work, buddy.
Well, I've been publishing for the past 8 years, and then I've been getting into a little bit of music, online columns, radio work here in Portland as well. So this is, like Roddy said, another thing that is a great platform to be discussing all these wonderful queer LGBTQIA topics.
That's great, and you're a fine addition to GNR. Thank you, Samuel. So we are going to start with you. So the first topic, we just had a discussion with Shadi, who had an experience going through airport security in Orlando with TSA. I don't know if you've had a chance to review some of the facts of the situation, but she live tweeted her nightmare at the Orlando airport, and some of the facts were that the screeners are required to hit a button identifying gender, whether it be male or female, by visual inspection prior to going through. So the screener identified her as female. She went through the scanner, and then an anomaly appeared, and we know what that is. And then security was notified, and it became a real situation. Just wanted to get your initial reaction. What are your initial thoughts when you see the experience that she went through with TSA and her nightmare? What was your first impression, Samuel?
Well, I was unaware of this whole gender button situation. And what I think, firstly, is how many times has this happened and we haven't heard about it? And that's the issue that I have, because if that's something that they've been doing all along, there must be a lot of individuals who have gone through that experience. They just didn't have a public platform to share it. And so that's my initial reaction, that I go, oh, this makes me think, how many times has this happened? And the other thing that I don't understand, I did read her live tweeting and everything, and, I was very uncomfortable by the whole experience. And what I think is, okay, even if you're not necessarily trained to go through something like that, being a member of the TSA, what exactly is the issue? If you have somebody who is not falling under the binary gender ideas that you have and have been trained to understand, if that person is not doing anything violent, doesn't have any weapons on them, you know what I mean? And so I just don't understand exactly what the issue is when it comes to gender, and that makes me very angry, because there is no reason behind that treatment. And, again, it's just a plethora of situations that are coming up through social media when it happens to people who have a platform where they can share with a lot of people, and people are starting to understand that this, essentially this transphobia and homophobia and all these things keep coming up, and it's still not being taken care of. So that's sort of my take on that.
Thank you, Samuel. Roddy Biggs, the hashtag is traveling while trans. Her name is Shadi, and it was a nightmare experience for her. What is your take on her story?
Like Sam, I don't see the big issue in it. And again, I wasn't aware of the gender buttons that they hit. And the point that they, for one, have the gender buttons, but does it really even matter what gender the person is? And why do they have to identify it? And then if they aren't, like they're not trained on trans people, evidently, that's something the TSA needs to include in training and say, hey, not everybody's going to fall under your male and female button. And they just have to deal with it. And the fact that they made such a big deal about it, again, like Samuel said, how many people has this happened to? And we haven't heard anything about. It just really all doesn't make sense, and why government officials wouldn't be trained to know that not everyone's male and female, and that there is a spectrum. That's just one more thing that we have to change.
That's right. Thank you, Roddy. Special Agent Jay, just to let the listeners know, you and I have known each other since 9/11, so it's time to get honest when this story relates to potential terrorism. As you and I both well know, there is an ISIS, there is an Al-Qaeda, there is an Al-Shabaab. So you understand, as I do, that the TSA procedures that are in place right now is to prevent any potential terrorist act against Americans on our soil. So the question for you is, how does that balance of trying to prevent potential terrorism square with trans rights and what happened to Shadi and many others who are going through invasive body scanners and pat-downs?
Well, what happened to Shadi was completely unfair and unjust, in my opinion. And I'm certain a lot of people believe the same way, because it was a violation. And, you know, when I go through an airport, I, of course, get thoroughly checked. It's been a while since I've been through one, so, I mean, I haven't really gone anywhere in a while. I'm not entirely up to date on the TSA's current rules and regulations, but this just seems it's a miscarriage of justice, I think, because why are there buttons is my question. Why are there even buttons? It shouldn't matter at all. And, you know, it's, gosh, how do I put this? See, I recently met and befriended a trans woman, and she helped explain everything because I was having some difficulty understanding. And if there's one thing about me, I need to know. I need to understand. When some kids would curl up at night with their goosebumps and scary stories to tell in the dark, would curl up with the volume of the encyclopedia. So I need knowledge. And having met this woman, I was introduced to the show I Am Kate, which I've been watching religiously. And it's really helping me understand the struggle and the discrimination and the prejudice and the bigotry. And it's opening my eyes. But what happened to her, oh gosh, that I could not imagine that sort of nightmare.
That's right. Then let me swing back around the digital room here, coming back to Samuel. I know that you have a lot of particular feelings about gender, so I want to ask you, you know, going off of that point, is that fair for TSA to have buttons of pink or blue and to make that identification? Or is that part of their knowledge gap where, you know, trans equality and groups that are trying to work with TSA still needs to bring them up to current code, so to speak?
Well, it's extremely ignorant because we're talking about archaic binary codes of anything. And the fact that they're still abiding by that rule is bizarre to me. I also want to touch on this idea that I think a lot of people who are not educated about the topic of gender, of sexual identity, when it comes to situations like this through the TSA, they believe that, you know, everybody should abide by those rules because, you know, it's more about national security and we're just taking care of ourselves and the safety of others and all that stuff. And I think that's a big issue that people need to understand. If you're going to be a member of a group like that that's taking care of everybody in an airport and making sure that everything's safe, you have a plethora of other things that you should look into, and gender is not one of them. Even if somebody's not transgender and happens to be cross-dressing, that's not hurting anybody. So if somebody happens to want to dress as the quote-unquote opposite gender, it's not about that. It's about whether the person has weapons on them, whether they're acting a certain way. And I think that's an issue that people still don't understand. They want trans individuals to abide by very basic ideas because it makes it easier for people to then just plead, to either side. So, I think it's still a big issue in society at large, and you and I have spoken about gender and my ideas of that. And, I just think that's a big issue with transphobia right now, which is, you can do whatever you want in other places, but at the airport, we need to make sure we're safe. And it's like, well, it really isn't about what I'm wearing. Even if I had a wig on my head and that makes somebody uncomfortable because I am a cis male, it shouldn't be an issue unless they find something in my bag, unless I act a certain way, etc. So, all this gender stuff is pretty archaic. And, to each his or her own. We all have very different backgrounds and ways that we were raised and things that make us comfortable. If you want to act like what you think a man should be, fine. If you want to act what you think a woman should be, that's fine. But when you start, essentially you're requiring everybody to go beyond their comfort level to make your job easier, where if, that with this story, what bugs me is that it's not like anything happened that, she forgot and she put like a big bottle of a liquid in her bag or something. It's not like they found something that was suspicious. The suspicion was her physicality, and in a way that's still not being respected by even popular opinion, which I think is a big issue.
Thank you, Samuel. Roddy Biggs. Next question, staying with the trans topic. We have some very visible trans figures that are in the media and in the world of film and television in the most recent year. So I just want to throw out three names to you, Roddy. I'm going to go around the room, but I'm going to throw out three names, and I want to ask you your feedback just based on the names. Laverne Cox from Orange is the New Black. What do you think about Laverne Cox?
I really don't know all that much about her, but I have looked some stuff up, and she's doing a great job portraying it in a TV show and actually putting positive light and making people think about what they might be saying or doing or what being trans really is. So I'd have to applaud them.
And what's your take on Caitlyn Jenner, both her coming out as a woman and her transition in her TV series? What do you think about Caitlyn Jenner right now?
Well, I'm happy that Caitlyn Jenner finally was able to be herself. It kind of bothers me in a way as well because she did it so fast and had all the backing and had all the support, and it almost gave a false hope to people because the trans community is one of the poorest communities in the world to begin with, and they don't have $10,000 for surgery. They don't have the support. So it's like, while it worked out great for her, it doesn't work that way for everyone, and it's given non-community members a sense that, oh, it's easy, it's not a big deal. So it's helped with one thing, but it's also set back in another, and it's just going to have time to fix.
So you're talking about, of course, Caitlyn Jenner being both a person of wealth and privilege, having access to anything that she wants as far as surgery or medical resources versus the everyday common, transgender person, with limited income, correct?
Correct.
Those are good points. Let me move on to Special Agent Jay. Do you want to respond to both your thoughts on Caitlyn Jenner privilege versus the everyday trans person? Is there a major disparity there?
I agree. I believe there is, because there is not a support network for individuals who want to go through the transition. And she was, is a person of wealth and privilege and has all of those resources. I've been watching the show. Her house is up on top of this hill with a magnificent view. She's got a pool, this giant great room, and she's got the Kardashians underneath her, for crying out loud. So yeah, I do agree that there is a disparity.
And what about Laverne Cox? Laverne Cox has recently come out and addressed the issue of the trans murders that are happening, these startlingly high numbers, and Laverne Cox says that we are in a crisis. Do you agree?
I agree. Wholehearted.
Okay. Next question goes to Samuel. Let's talk about that. Unfortunately, the topic of the trans murders, trans visibility. Where do you feel that we stand right now in September 2015?
On very shaky ground, for sure. I really enjoy Laverne, and going back to that, two very public trans women right now that are showcasing very different parts of that spectrum. And I think it's very important for people to actually see Caitlyn. I don't really find myself attracted to Caitlyn's energy personally. I appreciate that it is teaching people that trans individuals are all over the spectrum, and in her case, is a person of many privileges for sure, but is also a person who, just because she's trans, doesn't mean that she's an ally to the community per se, and discussions about that have come up ever since she transitioned, and her conversation recently with Ellen, where she essentially said that she wasn't really for same-sex marriage. So this is a person who's not necessarily part of a community, and just recently, through his struggle, became more involved to understand where she was and what she could do in her life, but it wasn't necessarily that this person was part of the queer community from before and is interested in helping, whereas you have somebody like Laverne, who is really using her platform to reach out and help other people beyond her trans struggle. And, that conversation about the murders and everything is unsettling, because it's a truth that has been there for a long time, and now it's more visible, but it still hasn't really changed. And that goes back to a lot of our archaic social norms when it comes to the binary code of gender. A lot of people still don't want to look beyond that. And when you're in a socially ignorant place, harassment can happen so easily, and it leads to a lot of violence. And we still live in a world where specifically women are seen as lesser still, even though we want to think that we've gone past that. We haven't in a lot of places. And so when you're talking about somebody who is female identified and or a person of color in a situation when it comes to gender, it's like it blows people's minds to such a degree that the level of ignorance is just more palpable, and it leads to a lot of rape and other kinds of violence and even murder. And I think that the dialogue is still not sturdy enough, especially because, again, if you go back to that duality of the trans visuals right now, you have somebody like Caitlyn, who is a white woman, and then you have Laverne, who is a black woman, and the person who's actually talking about things that are topical and quite important is the black woman, not the white one. So then there's still this disparity of like, Caitlyn her reach is way, way bigger than Laverne's, but you don't hear her talking about that. You don't hear her talking about those topics, and that conversation is not coming from that point. So again, socially speaking, we sort of have a lot of minorities struggling to talk about multiple things at once. It's almost as if we expect, okay, if you want to talk about race, let's talk about race alone. Or if you want to talk about gender, let's talk about gender alone. And a lot of those things are quite intertwined. So I think it's just a lack of being able to deal with more than one thing.
Okay. Now, Samuel, I'm going to stay with you for a moment. So on the similar topic, Stonewall, the movie from director Roland Emmerich, is about to come out. Now, I don't know if you've seen this, but very rarely does a movie trailer, just a 2-minute movie trailer, hit the internet, unless it's a Batman starring Ben Affleck. Very rarely does a trailer hit the internet that causes so much outrage and offense within 5 minutes as the Stonewall movie. So staying with you, starting with you, Samuel, the questions are, is Stonewall the movie whitewashed?
Well, I'm kind of sick of using that term myself, so I'm just going to say it's quite inaccurate, and it's very Hollywood. How about that?
Okay. So there were several true-to-life trans women of color that were really involved in Stonewall, and that's the historical fact. This is documented.
Right.
Roland Emmerich has created a fictional cisgender white male from the South to tell the story because he feels it'll be more palpable. What are your thoughts on him using a fictional white bread Southern character as the main story surrounded by trans women? What do you think about that?
I have so many things to say. These topics today. Well, again, this is a great thing for people to understand so that everybody is aware of the fact that just because you are anything doesn't mean that you actually support that. So by me being a queer man doesn't mean that I'm actually on top of my queer stuff. And this is the case for this project. When I saw the trailer the first time, I thought, okay, no queer people were involved here, obviously, right? That they just couldn't. And then you realize that the director and the script was written by queer men. And you think, okay, what happened here? But at the same time, you have to acknowledge that this is not a public service announcement in any way. These are people who are part of an industry that makes money off of a formula. And unfortunately, they're sticking to that above the actual story that could be so important to tell in this moment in time, especially because we're talking about trans people of color as well. So, I could talk about this all day, so I'm just going to say a little bit and then say some more later if we keep talking. But, it's just unfortunate because, again, you have a platform, but at the same time, these are people who are making money off these projects. They're not doing this because they're changing the world. If you look at Roland Emmerich's filmography, he's not making films that matter per se. I mean, this is a person who makes big budgeted films. This is the guy behind Independence Day, Godzilla, The Day After Tomorrow, 2012, 10,000 BC. Like, none of these films are, built on accuracy and social work. So I'm not surprised that this person, who happens to be queer, directed this movie, and this movie is inaccurate. So that's my take on that.
Thank you, Samuel. Special Agent Jay, we've had many conversations about Stonewall privately. You've been a staunch defender of the project and a defender of Roland Emmerich, so I'm sure that you're chomping at the bit to get your word in here. Why don't you give us your take on Stonewall and what Emmerich has done here?
Okay. Well, my opinion on this is this. This is the guy that blew up the White House. He wiped out New York City with a tidal wave. He Los Angeles with tornadoes. He's the master of disaster, and for him to take this sort of turn, it's very interesting. But, however, he made a film that wasn't mentioned in the earlier interview called Anonymous, which basically calls out Shakespeare as a fraud. And I love it. It's got Rhys Ifans and, oh gosh, laundry list of extras. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. He's trying to dip his toe in the pool of dramaticism. And whether this works or not, I don't know. but I think it is a story that is valid and pertinent, and he's kind of been sitting on this one for a while, waiting for this SCOTUS decision to come through. I mean, it's been in the can for about, 8-9 months now, and it's just now coming out. But I love Roland. I've met the man. He's very generous. He's very gracious. I think he's doing things in the best interest. However, I think he's missing some of the marks. And as you mentioned, there were several transgendered individuals of color, and one of which threw the brick. But what you see in the trailer is this white Twinkie kid doing that. And I'm like, no, don't change history. I mean, I go back and forth on it. I really do. I mean, he's got a sequel to Independence Day coming out, I think, next year. So we'll see what happens.
I know they wrapped filming. I saw the photo where they wrapped filming recently. I know it's in the can.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm gonna give it a shot. Okay, just to be fair. Roddy Biggs, coming over to you really quick. Do you feel, just based on the trailers and the clips that are coming out, that Stonewall, as an attempt to tell the story of Stonewall, that the queer community should give it a shot? What do you think about Stonewall?
Yeah, I do. The big thing that I see is that it is inaccurate, but at the same time, it's covering important information. So I'm honestly just going to have to see the film and see if the facts are presented in a good way, even if it does have a lack of colored actors. But if they portray it properly, it could be a fictional film, but not necessarily be the real, true story. But what is a true story that Hollywood makes anymore? So
Agreed.
I'm just really going to have to see it and know what happens after it comes out.
Well, let me ask this, Roddy. If Roland Emmerich's goal, and I've read the interview, he just did this big interview where he talked about his motivation, that he defended himself from the criticism. He said that there have been other cases where directors did films that involved characters that were completely opposite from the director, opposite gender, opposite color, and they were incredibly criticized by the community with phrases like, that wasn't your story to tell. So I think that what Roland Emmerich said in this interview is that he wanted to tell the perspective from a white cisgender male, something that he could personally identify with, but who is then surrounded by trans people of color. And I will totally give him credit. I've looked at 4 or 5 clips or scenes from the movie. There are definitely trans characters of color. We just haven't quite seen the whole film yet. So, Roddy, the question is this. Do you think that if he manages to tell the story of Stonewall and bring that knowledge that there was a Stonewall to a greater audience that is completely unaware, doesn't that serve a greater good?
Absolutely. What it's going to come down to is how does he present the changes that he makes, and do the changes change what people would think history was, or does he use those characters to build on the actual factual history, or is he going to be saying this is history when it's really not?
Right. Yes, exactly.
So, I'm really just going to have to see it, and I'll know more after that.
I was pretty upset when I first saw the trailer, but I admit that I've kind of loosened up a little bit, and I've looked at more clips. I don't want to give a film like Stonewall a bad grade on Rotten Tomatoes before I've seen it. That's not fair. I just think that the reason that there's so much criticism from the community, and I know you guys have seen it, I'm sure you've seen it light up like a Christmas tree, is that people are just upset by the premise that he's inserted fictional characters into what we all acknowledge was the Stonewall riots that started the gay rights movement in 1969. I mean, it was what launched our movement, which has now brought us to 2015, where we have marriage equality. So it's such a pivotal moment in gay rights history, and there were ways to tell that story from a historical perspective, but I guess I'll point out this. There are excellent documentaries, I think it's even called Stonewall, that people can go see the documentary if they want to see the factual account versus a Hollywood production. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's actually playing in Portland before this Stonewall goes up. So if people are interested in seeing the documentary of a lot of factual things, then that's going to be available for people to go see before the new film comes out.
I applaud them for showing that. That's a great idea.
Yeah, it's at the Clinton Theater.
Yeah. Clinton Theater, okay. Now I wanted to, I normally would have done this at the very beginning, but we sort of jumped into topical. I'm going to go around the room and ask everyone to check in on what you're currently working on. I will start. I'm working on Gay News Radio to start off with, and I will actually be appearing this Saturday night for the Lady Justice League V to Shining V. There's a special event with some funny ladies of comedy that will be at the Curious Comedy Theater that they did an interview last night, and they've asked me to come appear on stage. Now, you will probably all laugh out loud, but I put an offer out there, and I didn't realize they were going to take it, but they want me to do a 5-minute one-man monologue from the Vagina Monologues.
I saw that on Twitter, and I could not believe it, but, I mean, hey, go for it and do a great job.
What do you think, everybody? Should I do it? Or maybe
yes,
you can teach?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I don't think there's a question about whether or not you should do it. I think
whether I should do it.
Don't even ask
should
yourself
do it.
that. Do it.
Yeah.
Do it.
I don't want to tarnish my reputation.
Make
You've
sure
already
it's
done
recorded.
that, Brandon. Come on.
That is true. I think it should be recorded. I want to watch this.
Oh, I do too.
Oh, it'll be on YouTube by 10 o'clock. You know it.
Perfect.
Oh, awesome.
Thank you.
So in general, I spend most of my time right now working on Gay News Radio. Again, thank you all for participating in this project. Let me go around the room. Roddy Biggs, I know that you're involved with some LGBT organizations. What are you working on these days, Roddy?
Well, first and foremost, I'm working on Gay News Radio. That's why I'm here today. Like I said, I'm the president of a college GSA. So right now, we are working on a National Coming Out Day. We are doing Safe Zone training. We are doing a bullying day. We're doing a Road AIDS Day. So I've got my hands full with that. On top of that, I work with TEP on some issues and also work with an organization that goes into high schools and tries to make sure all high schools are equal. So I've got my hands kind of everywhere in the community, and I'm always open for new things. So I'm probably not going to stop, and more than likely I'm going to keep doing more and more and more until I just can't do anymore, but that's not going to happen. So here I am.
And do you find that your time is really in demand like I do, Roddy? Do you find that you're spending more time than not doing something and sacrificing sleep? I mean, I believe you're working and going to school and participating in organizations, right? You have triple duty.
Correct. But no, honestly, my time's valuable, but I'm doing what I want to do with it. So if that means one night I don't go to sleep, I don't go to sleep that night, and I'll sleep when I can, because if I'm doing something that benefits people, it doesn't really matter if I sleep or not, or if I get to go hang out with friends or go see a movie that I really want to see, because I've got a life, and it's the life I want to live. So I'm going to do what I can.
Thank you, Roddy. Special Agent Jay, before I ask you what you're up to, I just want to highlight the fact that for those of us in Portland, this has been Earthquake Preparedness Week. All of our news stations and newspapers have bombarded us with talk about Earthquake Preparedness Week. So what are you working on, Special Agent Jay, and what are your thoughts about this being Earthquake Preparedness Week?
Yes, I do watch the nightly news, and I do know that it's Quake Week. For whatever reason, it has suddenly become the forefront news headlines, and it should have been 300 years ago. But what I'm doing now is writing a script titled Cascadia, and it's about two men who are married, and they have a fight, and they get separated during the earthquake, and it's a 9.8, and it's very big, it's very bad. It's basically a step-by-step public service announcement on how to prepare yourself. Know where your gas turnoff is. Know how to keep enough unperishable canned foods in your pantry. Know how to keep a first aid kit at reach, and know how to leave when you need to. So with my work with the USGS and the PNSN, I've been able to glean a lot of information on how exactly someone should be able to survive what's the inevitable, because it's going to happen, and there's no stopping it. So you just have to be ready. I would recommend...
Don't you have any good news?
Well, there might be a solar flare cooks up and fries us all, but what I'm trying to do is just prepare people for the inevitable, because we haven't been talking about it. It hasn't been an issue until just recently, and now it's been, since January 26th, 1700, that Cascadia erupted, and that's 315 years, and it has an average of 150 to 200, so we are way over the window, and we saw what happened in Japan, didn't we? Yes? Okay.
Yeah.
And that could happen here. And I'm very passionate about it. I'm sure you can tell.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what, when the big one hits, I'm just going to go down to 7-Eleven and pick up a couple of water bottles and some chips, and I'm just going to ride the thing out. That's my plan.
Okay. Sounds like a plan to me.
Right.
Thank you, Jay. Samuel, you're a busy writer, always working on something. What do you have going on these days?
Always cooking something. I'm actually getting back into photography, so that's nice, just to get the creative juices flowing. And I'm taking some steps to go into film, because I would like to see more diverse and accurate things out there. And I'm actually working on the follow-up to Toy Soldier, the last book. And I'm also working with another writer who runs Panda Monk Publishing in Virginia, and he wants to create a short story compilation between the two of us. I'm working on those two books. And sleeping. I actually like to sleep. So I'm definitely making time to do that. I'm not one of those who's like, I like to be recharged so that I can do stuff. But other than that, I keep my column on Examiner.com up and running about queer-related content, and doing a little bit of work with Wild Planet Radio here in Portland. So beyond that, this wonderful panel work with GNR is pretty amazing.
That's great. And I'm gonna come back around the room, starting with Samuel. And this is open discussion, but as far as GNR, what we can talk about on air and what we can do for the community to meet our goals. Remember, if you look at our website, it says we are all-inclusive LGBTQIA internet radio. What would you like to see us do with GNR in order to meet our goals of being inclusive, Samuel?
Well, I definitely invite anybody who's interested in discussing these things to come and contact one of us, and hopefully you can become part of the panel conversations and all of that. I would like to definitely see more diversity and just more interesting conversations about the spectrum of LGBT and what that means. I think we're doing what we're doing so far. We're all passionate and advocates in our own way to to teach and inform, and there's always room for that for more people. So come on down and become part of the team. That's what I say.
Okay, thank you, Samuel. Special Agent Jay, are we hitting our goals? What more can we do?
Well, I think we could discuss the Muppets.
Well, I was going to finish with the Muppets. So how about the LGBTQIA, A, B, C through Z? How do we get them all included? What would you like to see happen with GNR?
Okay, well, as of the other night when I watched the premiere episode of the Muppets,
Okay, we're going Muppets. I see where we're going. Okay.
I grew up with the Muppets, all right? I mean, it was that 9 o'clock Thursday evening show that the parents would laugh at. The kids got entertainment with the puppets, and, you know, it was colorful and shiny, and, you know, but there were a lot of jokes that just flew right over my 8-year-old head, and I had no idea what they meant. And now, watching the show in its reiteration, Fozzie Bear is driving down the interstate and says something to the effect of, so I sent out a personal ad advertising a passionate fuzzy bear looking for love and got a lot of wrong answers. And, oh my God, my husband and I just busted up laughing because we got it. We got it.
Oh, I get it.
We got it. You know, it's like the Golden Girls. You know, I grew up I was kind of a latchkey kid, and my parents worked odd hours, so I was often carted off to my great grandparents' houses and, you know, just to be babysat for a while. And they would watch the Golden Girls, and they would be laughing, and it's like chest-heaving laughing. And I didn't understand the humor until now. And now I'm thinking, holy crap, my great-grandparents had a very good...
Well, your Muppets, though, your favorite organization is back. 1 Million Moms, all of our favorite organization is back, and the Muppets have returned to ABC, and 1 Million Moms is under attack, asking people not to watch it. Don't show it to your children. So since you went there, you went fuzzy bear on me. Let me throw the question out there. Is the new Muppet show sexual? Is it perverted? And is it too hot for TV? I want to hear from all of you on this.
It is progressive. I understand where they're going, and still, they're keeping the humor cerebral, so it's kind of at a level where you have to be a bit of an adult to understand it, and it airs at the same time, so it's kind of like bedtime, you know, here's some puppets for the kids to go to sleep to, and you're not going to understand what they're talking about, but the mothers and fathers or whatever can laugh and put the kids to bed. And I think
Roddy Biggs, if parents watch this new Muppets with their children, is it going to mess them up for life? What do you think?
With everything going on in society, I think the Muppets is the last thing that we need to worry about messing up children in society. I mean, yes.
Thank you.
You watch Shrek. They make jokes. Parents love it for their children. Watch any Disney movie, and they're going to say something that children don't need to hear, but they don't know it. They're kids. They're innocent to the world. So, no, the Muppets is not too hot for TV. Those much roast shows on TV did on. So, the parents are overreacting, and just because they understand doesn't mean their children are going to understand what the hell they're talking about on TV. So, no, I'm going to watch the show. I watched the premiere, and I'm very excited to see more of it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, doesn't anyone remember Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, 1973?
Yes.
He says,
Thank you.
I am now telling the computer exactly what it can do with this many chocolate bars. I was 8 years old, and I laughed my little arse. I got it at 8. I think we all understood.
Okay, Mason Verger.
Yeah, they were pretty progressive in that film, and that's going way back.
They made a second film off of it because it did so well. So, I mean, again, it doesn't matter. Children have a lot more to worry about messing them up than a bunch of puppets doing jokes that they're not going to understand anyway.
In all fairness to this 1 million moms, I mean, haven't they protested, Ellen? Well, won't they protest, a pair of pants walking out the door? And they'll protest anything, right? They're kind of like Westboro Baptists, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, I also want to add that this 1 million moms, or whatever they're called, are not really a million people either. I mean, if you go to their social media, I think it's like less than 80,000 people are part of that group. So we're also not talking about like an exaggerated amount of people who are just like blasphemy. These are like very few people who are finding things to worry about unnecessarily. And I do have to add that beyond the sinful and perverted comments that they made, one of the comments that they made was that Kermit wasn't wearing pants, and that was inappropriate. So you also have to consider the type of intelligence that the people are bringing forth. And I do agree with what he said. There's so many things out there that are worse than anything that they could do on the Muppets, and we're not really talking about that. Like, if you really want to talk about how impressionable kids are, let's talk about the violence that's out there in television, in TV shows for children, TV shows that children can watch, movies, like anything. And so it's like
bullying each other on Facebook, right?
Right. So there's this hypocrisy that's still prevalent in trying to control the content that's going out there. And because of social media now, everything's sort of so spread out that people can't really gauge this type of kind of puritanical control that existed before. Now, the way that we're censoring is different because it applies to how we live our lives, and children are exposed to so many different things that the Muppets are really the last thing that they should worry about.
Agreed.
Totally.
Well, I will just say this. My childhood memories of the movies and TV shows that I grew up with is intact, and Hollywood pretty much could never, ever destroy my childhood unless they were to remake Willy Wonka. If they ever do that, they will totally destroy my childhood.
Well, they did.
What?
They did do it with Johnny Depp just a few years ago.
I know nothing about that. Deny.
Whoa, check your facts, dude.
I hope that didn't destroy your whole childhood.
Okay.
I'll be crying
Pretend it
myself
didn't
to
happen.
sleep tonight. I'll be crying myself to sleep with the Wonka bar tonight.
Well, if you need to talk, you know who to call. We're all
well,
there.
you have your golden ticket, so you're good.
Well, you guys are a fun panel. Let's just thank everybody for making Gay News Radio what it is. I hope that we can do a weekly panel if you can all make it. We can do it by phone. So call it in from Buenos Aires, wherever you are. Call it in.
Thank you very much for having me, and I appreciate being part of the panel. Thank you very much.
Yes, me too. Thank you. Have fun, everybody. Have a good day.
Okay, Gay News Radio signing off, featuring Roddy Biggs, Special Agent J, and Samuel Laura. We'll be back next week. You can listen to Gay News Radio. Have a good day.
This is GNR, Gay News Radio.